If you'd like to, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I post every Wednesday. Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. It has been quite some time since I've sat down to film for you all because I've been busy traveling with EF Ultimate Break. I've done a couple of their trips over the summer and I most recently came back from Kenya and I wanted to do a review. I decided to do reviews of EF trips because it's one thing to see me actually traveling with them in the moment, and it's another thing to be completely done with the trip and be home post-trip and just tell you all what I thought of it, what we did, answer any questions you may have, and just things that I'm happy I did, things that I'm not happy I did, or just general things that are good to know. So I have some notes and whatnot on my phone that I will be referring to, so that's why I'll be looking down. I was there from August 11th to the 21st, so I was there for about 10 or so days, and I will say the first and last day are pretty much flying days because it is quite far, and especially me who came from the West Coast, it was a pretty long travel day, and they do account that in so that when you take time off and plan it, you account for the traveling time. So you really have 8 full days, which some people might think that sounds like a lot, some people think it might sound kind of short, and some might think it sounds perfect. For me it seems short, but when you're actually doing the day-to-day trip, you realize how much you get to do. And it's also a lot energy-wise, so I don't know how long I could last going from place to place, but it was absolutely incredible. You start out by flying into Nairobi, and you only spend about 2 nights in Nairobi. You get in, and for me and most of us, we got in pretty late, so given that it was late and we've been traveling for a long time, we just wanted to go to bed. The first actual full day when you're in the country, we got to do a couple of fun things. So first off, we went on our very first safari. What's different about this trip is that if you've been on another EF trip or similar type trip, usually everyone is on one bus and you go from place to place. But given the nature of this trip, it is not one bus, it is multiple different Jeeps that have about 5 to 6 seats per person in addition to the driver. So there'll be the main tour guide, and then there'll be his crew. So you'll see if you book this trip. For me, when it said what tour director I have, like the name, it said Eric and crew. So for me, Eric did do the main planning, but on a day-to-day basis, I spent more time with the person that was specifically driving our Jeep and giving the tour, named Chango. I loved both of them, so no complaints on the actual tour director and his crew. They were all really great, very sweet, informative, and just passionate about the safari animals, and it was just really amazing to hear all of the things they know and just for them to spread their wealth of knowledge to us. So we drove to the Nairobi National Park, and I did not expect for there to be safari park of completely wild animals right by the city of Nairobi that has skyscrapers. The animals that you see are wild. Nobody touches them. The people that work at the park, they just basically are making sure that poachers aren't there and people are behaving, like not getting out of their Jeeps because that's dangerous. My driver Chango did warn us about that, and immediately after he warned us, I saw skulls on the road and full skeletons. I did not expect to see so many animals on this trip. I'm not kidding. I've been to South Africa and I was gonna just compare it to that, which I did see a fair amount of animals there, but I feel like Kenya was a whole nother level. So that was amazing to see, and how they all live together. I mean, obviously there's the predators, but then the gazelles and the zebras and the giraffes and the water buffalo and the warthogs, they all just live harmoniously. And it was so cool. After that, we went to a giraffe sanctuary, which was a bit crowded, and a bunch of people ended up going our last day, which was a full free day. And they said it was a lot more calm there, a completely different experience if you go in the mornings. So that's one thing I'll get into later. What I wish I did is to plan more for the last free day. I still got to go and it was really cool. And then afterwards, we went to a women's organization where they make and sell like handcrafted beads and jewelry, which was really cool. They gave us a tour and showed us how it's made and how it helps benefit the woman working there, and they gave us a dance performance, and they involved us too. They like brought us out to dance, and then we got to buy their jewelry if we wanted to. And then the next day we went to Amboseli National Park. I felt like every single day there was like a type of animal we saw more of than other days. So when we were in Nairobi, it felt like a giraffe day with the sanctuary and all the giraffes we saw there. In Amboseli Park, as soon as we got past the gate, we saw animals immediately, and it's like a swampy area in certain parts. And then there's Mount Kilimanjaro, which was incredible, and Mount Kilimanjaro is technically in Tanzania, but the best views are in Kenya, so we were able to see the mountain. And that day was an elephant day. We saw so many elephants, and it was just, I had one of those moments of like, I can't believe this is my life, with the elephants and the backdrop of Mount Kilimanjaro, which we got lucky because oftentimes it's a bit cloudy, but it was such a beautiful view. It takes a while to get from place to place. That day it was a fair amount of driving we had to do, but then once we got there, we just immediately checked in our hotels and did a safari ride. And then the next day we had a early safari ride as well. I got to see the sunrise and the golden hour because, as per usual, I feel like the most animal action that you will get to see in the best time to view the animals is in the mornings. We got to see zebras, baboons, more elephants. We got to see a cheetah, which was cool, and this cheetah was in the middle of like tracking down some prey, which we kind of got to see a little bit of a show. Nothing crazy happened, but we got to learn more about how cheetahs hunt for prey. They like to use the element of surprise. So this cheetah found a gazelle, but then the gazelle noticed the cheetah and the cheetah kind of backed away. So it was cool to learn about that. And yeah, so that was amazing. So we did 2 safari drives that day, and then we ended off our second safari drive with going up a little hike. When I say hike, I say it very lightly. It was a 5-minute hike up to the top of this hill situation, but it gave such beautiful views. And you can't leave the jeeps, like I mentioned, for obvious reasons with wild animals roaming, including lions. There are certain exceptions, and one of them is this hike. The next day we drove to Lake Naivasha. We were able to have an option of, once we got to a certain part, to bike with animals around us in a safer area. There were no lions, it was mostly zebras and also like some buffalo, or you can continue on with the jeep. But again, because the drives are so long, most people opted for the bike, because when else can you bike in Kenya with wild animals around you? And I got to again see zebras and baboons. And basically we were biking to Hell's Gate, which then we did a hike as well. Nothing too crazy of a hike, but Hell's Gate is what inspired The Lion King. And Hell's Gate specifically, the little cliff area where we were, is where Mufasa fell in the movie. We got to our accommodation that evening. We just had one night in Lake Naivasha, and then the next morning we had the option to wake up a bit earlier than when we were leaving, which I think we were leaving around 9 or 10 a.m. If you wanted to earlier, we could go on a boat safari that happened right off of the accommodation site, and the goal of this boat safari was to see hippos, and we did. We saw a lot of hippos. We even saw a couple of eagles, and there was like an island nearby as well, and we saw different deer and other kind of animals like that, but the main part was the hippos. And then we drove to Masai Mara, which I had heard at this point this was the best safari game drives yet, which for me, Amboseli National Park, I was like, how am I gonna beat this? I saw so many incredible animals there. Masai Mara was incredible. It is about, I believe, 4 times the size of Amboseli National Park, which is just hard to wrap your mind around it. We ended up getting there, and we got there later on in the day, and the hotel is actually in the park, just like the one in Amboseli National Park, so we got to see animals on the way to the hotel. There we had the option to do the hot air balloon ride, which I highly recommend. It was so amazing, and I got to see animals from a different perspective. And I'm pretty sure also the day we got to Masai Mara, we did a game drive. I don't even know the amount of game drives we did total. It was probably inching towards 10, honestly. I think every day, besides like the first and last day, we did 1 to 2 game drives a day. And then afterwards, because it was a sunrise hot air balloon ride, we had breakfast afterwards. And this was another exception to being out of the Jeeps in the safari park, is this breakfast place. And I was expecting like a boxed breakfast. No, it was like a full-on like omelet bar, buffet style, like all the works breakfast place. They even had like champagne for us and different types of juices and like those like hot towels to help cleanse your hands. It was crazy. But honestly, the hot air balloon ride, I will say, is pricey. So, you know, since you're paying a lot, some people might be like, well, yeah, I expected this for the money I paid. For me, I was just pleasantly surprised. But either way, it was great. And I would say for that day of the hot air balloon ride, it was the day of the lions. I saw my very first male lion, and that was so cool. We were pretty close to it. And then later in the day, we saw so many lions, mostly lionesses, so the females. But I'm still so glad that I got to see a male lion. It was really cool. There's one point in the safari ride later on where there was just lionesses like all around us. Lions sleep for like 20 hours a day, so they were mostly chilling. The male lion though earlier wasn't. He was like actively moving around. We also got to have lunch again. This time it was a boxed lunch, and this was through EF, not the hot air balloon company. And this lunch was out in the safari in the open, and we all, like the 5 different Jeeps that we were in, got together. And with the Jeeps, you technically can like move from another Jeep to another one. There was one day where I did, but for the most part, they want you to stay in the same ones to not confuse anyone. And people tend to bond with the people in their Jeeps, so to not, I don't know, cause any like confusion or upset anyone because you took their spot. And the different tour guides, you know, if you go from one Jeep to another Jeep, maybe you're hearing some of the same info. So it just kind of makes more sense to stay in your Jeep. But I really liked my Jeep, so I was okay with that. The drive after lunch, that one, we got to see a leopard, which no one else saw a leopard but us, and it was incredible. It was like the highlight of the trip, honestly. So that was kind of a rough overview of what we did. We spent 2 nights in Masai Mara, and then we drove back to Nairobi and had a free day and then flew out that evening. So now to go over some of my notes and what I'm glad I did, what I wish I did. Also to answer someone's question, because someone did ask, when it comes to the water situation, I brought my own reusable water bottle. For this tour, they give you water bottles, and every single Jeep has a fridge with jugs of waters at all times available. So water was basically unlimited, and you got to have as much as you wanted. They made sure that you drink a lot of water, so no need to worry about that. What I wish I did in Kenya. So they always tell you, if you're gonna check a bag, to have like a spare set of pajamas and clothes and toiletries in case you lose your bag and you need to live off what you have on your person that you carry on the plane for like a day or 2. Well, I usually don't do that because it's just like more effort, and I have a lot of toiletries, so it's hard for me to choose what is like I need to bring versus what I can live without, and I kind of just trust the system. Well, I did check my bag. It was a carry-on sized bag, but again, too many liquids to bring on the plane. And I didn't get my bag. They lost it. Well, they didn't lose it, but I flew Seattle to London to Nairobi, and it never left Seattle. So I get to Nairobi and it's not there. And another girl who was on my flight she's from Utah, but she flew like Utah, Seattle, London, Nairobi. She had her bag make it to Seattle, but then never left Seattle. And I live in Seattle. That's my home airport, and I've never had that happen, I don't think. At least where it never left the SeaTac airport. I kind of learned the hard way to pack spare toiletries and clothes just in case. Other thing is I wish I had brought, like, the outfits that I brought was more of a safari kind of themed look to them all, like the khaki pants or the like button down shirts and all of that. I feel like everybody kind of had the same theme going on, and some of my clothes were safari-esque looking while others weren't. Luckily most of mine were, but I just wish I like didn't even bring like blue jeans or a blue shirt that I brought or this or that, but I'd stuck to my creams or like my mustardy yellow color, khaki green, even like this kind of like a mauve color, just like typical kind of terrain earthy color scheme. Just pack for the trip itself. You don't need to bring like your favorite things. I just wish I brought things more in like this color scheme and aesthetic. I wish I brought a iPhone or camera stabilizer, and I've noticed with my videos and with other people's videos in my tour group where they've uploaded it to social media, they'll be beautiful shots, but they're just shaky because the animal's moving and you're trying to zoom in, and the more you zoom in, the shakier the footage is naturally. But then also you're on a Jeep, and usually the Jeep is stopped but still running. Not always, but sometimes. So you're on this like running Jeep that's like vibrating from the motor, and then you're trying to zoom in, and it's, you know, easier to have shaky footage when you're zoomed in and the animals are moving. So it's just very impossible to get good stable footage. So I was able to fix some of this with like editing afterwards, but I do wish that I got one of those stabilizers. Now the next thing is to bring a camera that is good for photography and for zooming. I did bring the camera I'm filming on now, and each camera of course has its pros and cons and what it's best for. The camera I'm using now, it is very good for kind of more like sit down vloggy style YouTube. I love it, but for shooting wildlife it's not, and the lens I have, it just doesn't really zoom in that much or very well. So I just wish I brought like a more of a variety of cameras. Somebody that was on my Jeep, my friend Candace, had a Fujifilm camera. I can like put it here. I really liked her camera because it looked like professional quality photos, which I wish I took more photos. I took a lot of videos, but I do wish I took more photos. And then one of the biggest last things I wish I did is the very last day I mentioned is a completely full free day, because at this point you're in Nairobi, you spent the previous night in Nairobi, and you had the farewell dinner, which always happens on trips, the night before, and you're flying out that evening. So you have the whole day open, and I did not plan for it at all. I saw some people were planning and I was like, oh yeah, I'll look later. And then you get caught up in the trip itself, and before you know it, next day is the free day and you have nothing planned. A bunch of people were planning to go to like an elephant sanctuary, the giraffe sanctuary again, and everything was booked out because I was looking at it within like less than a 24-hour period. I wish I had done it before, so I have a plan. I ended up instead, which maybe it all worked out for the best, but I ended up instead going to the Kibera slum, which is the largest slum in Africa, I believe it is, not just Kenya, and about 350,000 people live there. One note that a bunch of people on my trip had is you didn't get to see too many locals. Like, we got to go to a village, but it was very brief. I don't know, people just wish they had more of an experience with locals. My guide that my friend and I had booked, which we booked this tour on Airbnb, he lives in the slums and he gave us a tour of it. He even let us into his home, which was so nice. It was a wild experience, so that was amazing. But I do wish I'd better planned my last day so I didn't feel so like stressed and scrambling for what to do the last minute, because some people did go to the elephant sanctuary in the morning and then they did the same tour I did later in the day, so that would have been good to utilize most of your last day. But then again, you may be completely exhausted at this point like I was and about to go on a very long overnight flight, so maybe it's good to rest. Just know you have that last full free day and to think about what you want to do. Things I'm glad I did. So I made a travel medicine appointment before all of my trips, all 5 countries I went to, and I went to this appointment and I told my doctor, who specializes in travel medicine, here's where I'm going. Do I need to get any immunizations? Do I need any paperwork, like related to medicine, not like visa wise? Do I need any medications? All this, all that. For Kenya, she did give me malaria pills and told me how to take it and everything. So I'm glad I did that to just, you know, put my health first and just to know what to expect and to prevent, because prevention is the best medicine. So some people did not do that. And I didn't hear from anyone getting anything from Kenya, but you never know. There are bugs there. I did see them. Although I wish I brought like a variety of cameras, I'm so glad I brought my nice camera, which this is my nice camera. I have this one, my smaller point and shoot G7X, and then my phone. So I brought all three and I'm glad I did. So if you have a nice camera, I recommend bringing it. Some people had some really nice cameras on my trip. Don't be afraid of it being stolen, because for the most part, you're with your Jeep, you're with your EF tour company, you're not so much out in the cities like you are on other EF trips traveling. You're more so isolated in these safari parks and just really in nature. We were told to bring carry-on suitcases only, no large suitcases, because everything you bring along with everyone else in your Jeep has to fit in the back of the Jeep, and there's not as much space as say underneath a bus. I went into a little bit of a panic because I always check a bag. I am just a serial overpacker. I decided I used the away suitcases. I bought a carry-on away suitcase because I had been thinking about it for a while, and I just really tried my best to pack just that, and then the Mateen backpack, which I have right in front of me here. Love this bag, and was able to do that. And then I brought on like a little tote bag that just like can pack into a little square, and then you can expand it if you need to have for like the things that I buy along the way. And that worked out pretty good, and I was able to at least expand my little suitcase because I bought the Flex or whatever where you can expand it. So I do recommend, you can bring hard suitcases. I've heard people say like you can't do that. From my experience, maybe different tour companies are different, but with the one you do with EF Ultimate, you can bring a hard suitcase and you don't have to bring a carry-on. It's just highly recommended. And I just think it was really funny that in my tour group of about 30 people, there were 2 guys, and guess which 2 people brought full-size suitcases? The 2 guys. All the girls brought carry-ons and the 2 guys brought full-size suitcases. That has been my just overview of the trip, what I'm glad I did and what I wish I did. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know if you're planning to do this trip or have in the past. And yeah, I wish you all safe travels. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video of mine. Bye!